The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Concordat gleamed like a diamond caught in starlight, its crystalline spires stretching upward into the purple-tinged atmosphere of Centauri Prime. Inside, representatives from over 1,000 worlds gathered for what many considered the most controversial meeting in recent galactic history, humanity's petition for membership in the Concordat. Commander Sarah Chen stood at the preparation chamber's viewport, her dress uniform crisp despite the station's humid atmosphere. She watched the swirling gas giants in the distance, their massive forms dwarfing the diplomatic station. After 15 years of isolated contact, humanity was finally getting its chance at the galactic stage. If only they knew what they were really in for. Commander Chen, a melodic voice chimed behind her. The council will see you now. Sarah turned to face Ambassador Tlara, the Etherian liaison assigned to the human delegation. The crystalline being's faceted form shifted through various shades of blue, anxiety, Sarah had learned. Thank you, Ambassador, Sarah replied, squaring her shoulders. Though I notice you're keeping your customary 3 meters of safety distance. Tlaria's crystal structure chimed softly, their version of nervous laughter. Merely following protocol for Class 13 species interaction, Commander. You understand. Sarah did understand, though it didn't make it any less frustrating. Humanity's classification as a Class 13 Deathworld species had been a point of contention since first contact. Most spacefaring races came from worlds rated between Class 3 and Class 8. A Class 13 world was considered nearly uninhabitable by galactic standards. The doors to the Grand Assembly parted silently, revealing a vast circular chamber. Tier upon tier of seated aliens rose up like an inverted pyramid, each species segregated by environmental needs. Some floated in bubbles of specific atmospheric compositions, others writhed in pools of various liquids, while still others existed as pure energy contained within specialized fields. Sarah strode to the center platform, her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. The gravity felt slightly off, calibrated for the galactic standard rather than Earth normal. She'd trained for this, but it still made her movements feel floaty and uncertain. High Counselor ZYX Tal, a being of pure energy, contained within an ornate mechanical frame, spoke first. Their voice resonated directly in Sarah's mind, a standard feature of Concordat translation technology. Commander Sarah Chen of Earth, you stand before the Galactic Concordat to petition for humanity's membership. Before we proceed, we must address the unique nature of your species' origin world. Sarah nodded, activating the holographic display she'd prepared. The familiar blue-green sphere of Earth appeared above her head, rotating slowly. Earth, as you've classified it, is indeed a Class 13 death world, she began. We have extreme temperature variations, high gravitational force, significant tectonic activity, aggressive wildlife, and a host of other features that make it challenging by galactic standards. However, these very conditions have shaped humanity into a species uniquely qualified to contribute to the Concordat. A ripple of murmur swept through the assembly. A Volosian representative, their gas cloud form swirling with agitation, spoke next. Qualified? Your species regularly engages in activities we would consider suicidal for entertainment. You voluntarily jump from high places with primitive fabric devices. You willingly enter bodies of water containing predatory life forms. You expose yourselves to extreme temperatures for pleasure. How can such reckless beings be trusted with galactic responsibilities? Sarah smiled, having anticipated this line of questioning. What you see as recklessness, we see as adaptation and innovation. Those primitive fabric devices you mentioned, parachutes, were stepping stones to our early aviation technology. Our interaction with marine environments led to advanced underwater breathing systems. Every challenge our world presented became an opportunity for growth. She gestured to her holographic display, which now showed various human achievements, space stations, underwater cities, climate-controlled habitats. We've learned to not just survive, but thrive in conditions that would kill most species. This resilience, this adaptability, is exactly what the Concordat needs. The galaxy is vast and full of unexpected challenges. Who better to help face those challenges than a species that evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day? The chamber erupted in overlapping voices, some supportive, others outraged. High Counselor ZYX Tao raised their energy form, silencing the crowd. An interesting perspective, Commander Chen. However, we must consider the safety of our member species. Your natural strength and resilience, while impressive, make you potentially dangerous to many of our members. Sarah was about to respond when every alarm in the station began blaring simultaneously. Red emergency lights pulsed through the chamber as a harried-looking Mechanian burst through the doors. High Council. We have a critical situation. The station's primary containment field is failing. We're looking at a cascade failure that could expose all sectors to hard vacuum within 30 minutes. The chamber erupted in panic. Most species represented here couldn't survive even brief exposure to vacuum, and evacuation of the entire station would take hours they didn't have. Sarah's voice cut through the chaos. High Council, with your permission, I can help. This is exactly the kind of situation humans are built to handle. High Counselor ZYX Tao's energy form flickered, their version of a raised eyebrow. And how would you propose to do that, Commander? The containment field generators are in sections of the station currently experiencing near-vacuum conditions and extreme temperature variations, correct? Sarah asked the Mechanian, who bobbed their metallic head in agreement. Conditions that would kill most species here, but that a human in basic EVA gear could survive long enough to repair. Sarah stood straighter. Let me prove humanity's worth to the Concordat, not through words, but through actions. There was a moment of tense silence before ZYX Tao spoke. Very well, Commander Chen. Show us what a Deathworlder can do. As Sarah strode quickly from the chamber, she couldn't help but smile. Sometimes the best way to prove yourself was to dive straight into danger, something humans had been practicing for their entire existence. The real test was about to begin, and Sarah was ready to show the galaxy exactly why Deathworlders laughed in the face of danger. 90% of engineering is improvising while everything's on fire, Sarah muttered to herself as she sprinted through the emergency access corridor. The station's EVA prep chamber loomed ahead, its automated systems already whirring to life at her approach. Behind her, Claria's crystalline form shimmered with concern. Commander, the mortality probability calculations for this endeavor are distressing. Good thing humans are terrible at statistics, Sarah replied, already stripping off her dress uniform. The emergency EVA suit waited in its alcove, not the most advanced model, but it would do. What's the status of the containment field? 23 minutes until complete failure, Clara chimed anxiously. The nearest evacuation fleet is 40 minutes out. Commander, there's something else you should know. Sarah paused in the middle of sealing her helmet. What? The Mechanian engineers detected unusual energy signatures before the containment field began failing. This may not have been an accident. Sarah's eyes narrowed. Sabotage? Who would? She cut herself off. Never mind. Questions later, crisis now. Give me a rundown of the affected systems. The station's holographic schematics sprang to life around them. Claria's crystal structure pulsed with different colors as they highlighted critical areas. The main generator is located in Section 7 Alpha. 3 backup generators have already failed. The 4th is struggling to maintain minimal containment. Temperature in the affected areas has dropped to near absolute zero. Radiation levels are survivable in this suit for about 30 minutes, Sarah finished, checking the seals one final time. Plenty of time. Claria's form flickered, their equivalent of a horrified gasp. Commander, the Concordat's safety protocols clearly state. Clara, Sarah interrupted gently, your safety protocols were written by species that evolved on garden worlds. I'm from Earth. We wrote our safety protocols in blood and rewrote them in triumph. She grabbed a toolkit and magnetic boots from the emergency stores. Now, are you going to help me save this station or lecture me about regulations? The crystalline being hesitated, then their colors shifted to a determined purple. The fastest route to Section 7 Alpha is through the maintenance tunnels. I can guide you from here and monitor your vital signs. Sarah grinned inside her helmet. Now you're thinking like a Deathworlder. Open the airlock. The journey through the maintenance tunnels was a nightmare by any normal species standards. With the artificial gravity fluctuating wildly, Sarah had to alternate between magnetic boots and controlled pushes, all while navigating tight spaces never meant for humanoid access. The temperature dropped steadily as she approached the affected section, ice crystals forming on her suit's exterior. Status update, she called out, her breath fogging slightly inside her helmet despite the environmental controls. 17 minutes until complete containment failure. Claria's voice crackled through her comm. Commander, your core temperature is dropping despite your suit's insulation. Feels like winter in Chicago, Sarah grunted, pushing through another maintenance hatch. Practically tropical compared to that survival training in Antarctica. She emerged into what should have been a busy generator control room. Now it was a frozen tomb, emergency lights casting eerie shadows through the crystallized air. The main generator hulked in the center, its normal smooth hum replaced by an ominous whine. I'm at the generator. Talk to me, Clara. What am I looking at? The ambassador's voice came through in bursts, static increasing as the containment field's deterioration interfered with communications. The primary power coupling has been deliberately misaligned. Someone manually overrode the safeties. Definitely sabotage then, Sarah muttered, already moving to the access panel. Her gloved fingers, designed for fine manipulation even in extreme conditions, worked quickly to remove the frozen bolts. Any idea who had access to this section? Cross-referencing, wait. Claria's voice sharpened with alarm. Commander, I'm detecting an energy surge. The saboteur may have left. The warning came too late. As Sarah pulled open the access panel, a burst of plasma erupted from the compromised systems. Pure instinct, honed by years of living on a death world where hesitation meant death, saved her life. She threw herself sideways, the plasma blast catching only her suit's outer layer. Commander. Claria's voice rose in pitch. Your suit integrity is compromised. You must evacuate immediately. Sarah checked her suit's readings. The outer layer was toast, and the inner layer was beginning to fail. The temperature around her had dropped even further, and now radiation was leaking through her damaged protection. A normal species would retreat. A normal species would wait for the evacuation fleet, accepting the loss of the station as inevitable. Humans were not a normal species. Clara, Sarah said, her voice steady despite the cold seeping into her bones, remember how you asked me why humans laugh at danger? Commander, please. We laugh, because sometimes the only way through hell is to pretend you're having fun. Sarah pushed herself back toward the generator, ignoring the warning bells from her suit. Now, help me fix this thing, before I freeze to death. The next 15 minutes were a blur of desperate engineering, improvised repairs, and what several species would later describe as terrifying human resilience. With her suit failing and communications becoming increasingly sporadic, Sarah worked to realign the power coupling while simultaneously bypassing the saboteur's tampering. Her fingers grew numb. Warning indicators screamed about dropping core temperature and rising radiation exposure. She kept working. 5 minutes until containment failure, Claria's voice barely cut through the static. Commander, your vital signs. Almost, got it. Sarah's teeth chattered as she made the final connections. The generator's whine changed pitch, then settled into its normal hum. Around her, the temperature began to rise as the containment field stabilized. Containment field restored to nominal levels, Clara announced, relief evident in their harmonics. Commander, a medical team is en route to your location. Please remain still and try not to die. Sarah laughed weakly, slumping against the generator. See? Told you it was plenty of time. Though I might need a short nap. When she regained consciousness in the medical bay several hours later, she found herself surrounded by a delegation of wide-eyed alien observers. High Counselor ZYX Dao's energy form hovered nearby. Commander Chen, they addressed her formally, you suffered radiation exposure and temperature extremes that would have killed most species 3 times over. You sustained injuries that our medical AI classified as unsurvivable. And yet here you are, making jokes about taking a nap. Sarah tried to sit up, wincing at her protesting muscles. All in a day's work for a Deathworlder, High Counselor. Though I'd really like to know who sabotaged your station. That investigation is ongoing, ZYX Tao replied. However, your actions today have shifted perspectives within the Council. Perhaps we have been too quick to view humanity's Deathworld adaptations as merely dangerous rather than potentially valuable. Sarah managed a small smile. Does this mean Earth's petition for membership is still being considered? The High Counselor's energy form pulsed with what might have been amusement. Commander, after witnessing one human save this entire station through sheer determination and what several species are calling terrifying disregard for personal safety, I believe the nature of our discussions will be quite different moving forward. As the delegation filed out, Clara remained behind. The crystalline being had moved closer than their usual 3-meter safety distance. I believe I owe you an apology, Commander, they chimed softly. I thought humans were reckless. Now I understand, you simply have a different framework for what constitutes acceptable risk. We prefer to call it getting the job done, Sarah replied. Though I'll admit, that was pushing it even by human standards. She paused, remembering something. Clara, did anyone recover my toolkit from the generator room? There was evidence in there that might help identify the saboteur. Clara's form shifted to a confused blue. Evidence? But you were barely conscious when they brought you in. Sarah grinned. Deathworlder, remember? We're really good at multitasking when our lives are on the line. Now, about that toolkit. The investigation was about to take an interesting turn, and Sarah had a feeling humanity's introduction to galactic society was just beginning. Sarah stared at the contents of her recovered toolkit spread across the medical bay's examination table. Among the standard tools lay a small crystalline shard, its surface etched with microscopic patterns that shouldn't have been there. She'd noticed it embedded in the generator's access panel during her desperate repair work, her Deathworld-enhanced senses registering the anomaly even through her failing suit. That's impossible, Clara chimed, their crystalline form shifting through shades of disbelief. This is void tech. It's been banned in Concordat space for over 3 centuries. Explain it to the human who didn't grow up with advanced alien tech, Sarah said, carefully rotating the shard under a scanner. Void tech was developed by the Nexari, an ancient species that nearly destroyed themselves trying to manipulate quantum boundaries. It allows the user to create controlled tiers in spacetime, perfect for sabotage that looks like equipment failure. Sarah's eyes narrowed. And you say it's been banned for centuries? Then either someone's been hoarding some very illegal tech, or someone has recently gained the ability to manufacture it, Clara finished, their color shifting to a worried violet. Either possibility has disturbing implications. Before they could discuss it further, the medical bay's door slid open. A delegation of Concordat security officers entered, led by Chief Investigator Krax, a towering insectoid whose carapace gleamed with official markings. Commander Chen, Krax's mandibles clicked in what passed for a formal greeting. The Council requests your presence. We have developments regarding the sabotage attempt. Sarah carefully tucked the crystal shard into a secure container. Perfect timing. I have some developments of my own to share. The walk to the Council chamber gave Sarah time to observe the station's repairs. Maintenance crews of various species worked to reinforce the affected sections, though she noticed they all gave her a wide berth, wider than the usual Deathworlder safety distance. Word of her terrifying survival had apparently spread. The Council chamber looked different from her first visit. Many representatives now attended via hologram, their physical forms evacuated during the crisis. Those still physically present had increased their environmental protection barriers. Fear, Sarah realized. Not just of another attack, but of change itself. High Counselor ZYXDAL's energy form pulsed with formal recognition as Sarah approached the center platform. Commander Chen, thank you for joining us. Our investigation has revealed concerning information. A holographic display materialized, showing security footage from various parts of the station. In the days leading up to the sabotage, we detected unusual quantum signatures in multiple sectors. Initially, we attributed this to normal background radiation. However, after analyzing the pattern, the display shifted, overlaying the quantum signatures with station schematics. They formed a clear pattern, a deliberate testing of security measures and containment systems. Someone was mapping your vulnerabilities, Sarah concluded. Setting up for something bigger than just one sabotage attempt. Correct, cracks clicked. And the timing, coinciding with Earth's petition for membership. You think this was aimed at humanity? Sarah asked, though she already suspected the answer. There are factions within the Concordat who believe allowing a Class 13 species into our society would be catastrophically dangerous, ZYXTAL admitted. The theory is that these elements may have orchestrated this crisis to demonstrate the risks of human involvement in Concordat affairs. Sarah couldn't help it, she laughed. The sound echoed through the chamber, causing several representatives to recoil in alarm. Even Claria's crystalline form vibrated with surprise. I apologize, Sarah said, containing her mirth. It's just, they tried to prove humans are too dangerous by creating a situation that only a human could survive? That's either incredibly ironic or incredibly stupid. She placed the container with the crystal shard on the platform scanner. The holographic display immediately filled with analysis data. This is what I found in the generator room. Clara identifies it as void tech, supposedly banned technology. But here's the interesting part. She highlighted certain patterns in the crystal structure. These manufacturing marks are recent. Within the last solar cycle. Someone's not just using banned tech, they're making it. The chamber erupted in overlapping voices. Void tech production was considered one of the gravest crimes in Concordat space, given its potential for catastrophic damage to spacetime itself. This is a very serious accusation, cracks clicked, mandibles twitching. Do you have proof of who might be manufacturing this technology? Better, Sarah replied. I have a way to find out. She turned to address the full council. The crystal's quantum signature is distinct. With the right equipment, we could trace it back to its source. But here's the catch, the trace would have to be done from within the quantum field itself. Impossible, one of the holographic representatives declared. The quantum field would destroy any organic matter instantly. Any normal organic matter, Sarah corrected. But humans, well, we evolved on a planet that bombards us with radiation daily. Our cells have developed remarkable repair mechanisms. With proper protection, I could survive long enough to complete the trace. Absolutely not, Clara chimed in, their color shifting to alarmed red. Commander, you nearly died repairing the generator. This would be exponentially more dangerous. Welcome to being friends with a Deathworlder, Sarah grinned. We have a different definition of impossible. She addressed the council directly. You're worried about humanity's place in the Concordat? Let us prove our worth. Let me find who's really threatening your society. High Counselor ZYXDAL's energy form pulsed thoughtfully. The council will need to discuss this proposal. However, Commander Chen, if we agree, you should know that this mission would have a very low survival probability. Sarah's expression turned serious. With all due respect, High Counselor, everything about humanity has a low survival probability. We evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every day, developed intelligence while running from predators that could tear us apart, and built civilization in spite of natural disasters that could wipe us out at any moment. We don't just survive against the odds, we thrive on them. She gestured to the holographic display, showing the station's damaged sections. You saw what one human could do in a crisis. Imagine what we could accomplish as full members of the Concordat. Yes, we're dangerous. Yes, we take risks you consider insane. But we do it to protect others, to solve problems, to push boundaries. That's what humanity brings to the galaxy, not just our strength or our resilience, but our determination to use those qualities for something greater than ourselves. The chamber fell silent, her words hanging in the air like a challenge. Finally, Zyxtal spoke. The council will deliberate. In the meantime, Commander, I suggest you prepare for the possibility that we will accept your proposal. After all, as you humans say, time is of the essence. As Sarah left the chamber, Clara fell into step beside her, noticeably closer than their usual safety distance. You knew they would agree before you even presented the evidence, didn't you? The crystalline being chimed softly. Sarah smiled. Another thing about humans, we're pretty good at reading situations. The council is scared, but not just of the saboteur. They're scared of change, of disrupting their carefully ordered society. Sometimes you need to give people a bigger threat to focus on. By offering to risk your life? Clara's form shimmered with concern. By offering them a choice between the devil they know and the Deathworlder who's willing to die to protect them. Sarah's expression hardened. Now, let's go prepare for a little quantum field diving. I have a feeling we're about to uncover something much bigger than simple sabotage. The quantum containment chamber looked like something out of humanity's wildest science fiction dreams, or nightmares, depending on your perspective. Swirling energy patterns created ever-shifting geometries in the air, while the specially designed containment field kept the quantum chaos from spreading beyond the chamber's boundaries. Sarah stood before it in a modified EVA suit, this one reinforced with technology she barely understood. The Concordat's best engineers had worked through the night to adapt their most advanced protective systems for human physiology. The result was a hybrid of human durability and alien innovation that they hoped would keep her alive in the quantum field. Final systems check, Clara announced, their crystalline form projecting diagnostic beams through the suit. The quantum shielding is holding at 94% efficiency. That's better than we expected, though still far below optimal safety parameters. Story of my life, Sarah muttered, running through her own checks. The suit felt heavier than her standard EVA gear, though the weight was oddly comforting. It reminded her of gravity training back on Earth. Chief Investigator Krax clicked his mandibles nervously as he reviewed the mission parameters. Once you enter the quantum field, you'll have approximately 7 minutes before the suit's shielding begins to degrade. The tracking device must be planted on the crystal within the first 3 minutes to allow enough time for the trace program to complete. And if I take longer? Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer. The quantum field will break down your molecular structure, Clara chimed softly. Even human cellular regeneration can't overcome complete atomic dissolution. Well, when you put it that way. Sarah sealed her helmet, checking the neural interface that would allow her to control the tracking device. How many test runs did you manage with the prototype? The silence that followed was answer enough. Wonderful, Sarah sighed. So I'm not just the first human to attempt this, I'm the first anything to attempt this. The council really knows how to make a girl feel special. Commander, Krax clicked, his compound eyes reflecting the quantum field's shifting patterns, you can still abort. No one would question. Yes, they would, Sarah interrupted. Every species in the Concordat would question whether humans can be trusted with real responsibility. Besides, she grinned behind her visor, someone's trying to tear apart your society and pin it on humanity. I take that personally. Before anyone could raise further objections, Sarah activated the chamber's entry sequence. The containment field parted just enough to allow her through, and she stepped into what felt like liquid reality. The quantum field defied normal description. Colors existed that had no name, and shapes formed that shouldn't have been possible in three-dimensional space. Sarah's suit sensors screamed warnings about physics violations that would have driven most species mad just trying to comprehend them. Status check, Claria's voice crackled through her calm, distorted by the quantum interference. Still molecular, Sarah replied, forcing herself to focus through the sensory overload. Moving toward the target zone. Each step felt like walking through thick syrup while simultaneously falling upward. The crystal shard, suspended in a specially designed container at the chamber's center, seemed to both retreat and approach with each movement. Sarah's Deathworld-honed senses, evolved to track predators through storm and darkness, struggled to make sense of the quantum chaos. 4 minutes remaining, Krax announced. Commander, your suit's showing strain in the upper quantum bands. Sarah ignored the warning, pushing forward. The crystal was just ahead, its quantum signature pulsing like a beacon in the chaos. She reached for it with the tracking device, only to have reality shift around her arm, putting the target suddenly out of reach. The quantum field is actively resisting manipulation, Clara observed. It's as if it's alive. That's impossible, Krax clicked. Quantum fields are energetic phenomena, not biological. 3 minutes, Sarah cut in, gritting her teeth. Less physics discussion, more focusing on not dissolving. She tried again, this time anticipating the reality shift. Years of surfing Earth's most dangerous waves had taught her how to read and write energy patterns. This wasn't so different, if you ignored the fact that the waves were in probability rather than water. The tracking device made contact. The crystal flared with energy, and suddenly Sarah understood. It's not resisting, she gasped. It's resonating. This isn't just void tech, it's responding to something. Something big. Warning alerts blared through her suit as the quantum field intensified. The crystal's resonance was creating a feedback loop, amplifying the chaos around them. Warning alerts blared through her suit as the quantum field intensified. The crystal's resonance was creating a feedback loop, amplifying the chaos around them. Get out of there. Claria's normally melodic voice had risen to an alarmed pitch. The field is becoming unstable. The trace program needs another 40 seconds, Krax clicked urgently. Sarah held her position, feeling her suit's protection beginning to fail. The quantum chaos seeped through, sending waves of agony through her body as reality itself tried to unmake her. But humans hadn't survived Earth by giving up when things got painful. Commander, your cellular structure is beginning to degrade, Clara warned. Please. 20 seconds, Sarah managed through clenched teeth. Just need to hold on for. The crystal suddenly pulsed with blinding energy. In the fraction of a second before all hell broke loose, Sarah's enhanced senses caught something in the quantum pattern. A signature. A purpose. Then the containment field shattered. Reality crashed into the chamber like a tsunami. Sarah's last conscious action was to grab the crystal and throw herself toward where she hoped the exit would be. Her world dissolved into quantum chaos and pain. She awoke to the familiar sensation of medical nanites repairing her cells. The med bay's soft lighting felt harsh after the quantum field's impossible colors. Claria's crystalline form hovered nearby, their color a worried purple. Did we get it? Sarah croaked, her throat feeling like she'd swallowed ground glass. The trace program completed successfully, Clara confirmed. But Commander, the results are deeply troubling. Sarah tried to sit up, immediately regretting it as her newly reassembled molecules protested. How troubling are we talking? The quantum signature leads to coordinates in the void sectors, Krax clicked, stepping into view. A region of space that's been quarantined since the Nexary extinction event. No ship has returned from there in over 3 centuries. Until now, apparently. Sarah finally managed to prop herself up. That pattern I saw in the crystal before everything went sideways, it wasn't random. It was a key. A key? Claria's form shimmered with concern. Someone's trying to open something out there in the void. Something the Nexary left behind. Sarah met their gazes steadily. And they're willing to tear the Concordat apart to do it. The implications hung heavy in the air. The Nexary's quantum manipulation experiments had nearly destroyed a quarter of the galaxy. If someone was trying to access their abandoned technology, the Council must be informed, Krax declared, turning to leave. Wait, Sarah called after him. There's something else. That crystal, it wasn't just resonating with the quantum field. It was resonating with me. Clara's form shifted to a confused blue. What do you mean? I mean, whatever the Nexari were working on out there. It has something to do with Deathworlders. And I think that's why someone's so desperate to keep humanity out of the Concordat. As if to punctuate her words, the station's emergency alarms began blaring once again. The emergency alarms weren't for another sabotage attempt. They were warning of something far worse. Multiple unidentified vessels emerging from quantum space, the station's AI announced, its usually calm voice carrying an edge of concern. Energy signatures match historical records of Nexari technology. Sarah stood at the station's main observation deck, her newly healed body still tingling from the medical nanites. Through the reinforced viewport, she watched as reality itself seemed to tear open. Ships emerged from the quantum rifts, sleek, crystalline vessels that seemed to exist partially in normal space and partially in dimensions human eyes couldn't process. That's impossible, Clara chimed, their crystalline form vibrating with fear. The Nexari are extinct. Their technology was quarantined. Someone's been busy in the void sectors, Sarah muttered, studying the ship's movement patterns. Years of military training kicked in as she analyzed their formation. This isn't a random attack. They're hurting us. Chief Investigator Krax clicked in agreement, his compound eyes reflecting the quantum rifts. The vessel configuration suggests they're trying to force the station into a specific position. But why not simply destroy us? The answer came from an unexpected source. High Counselor ZYX Dal's energy form materialized beside them, their usual composed presence now crackling with urgency. Because they need us intact, the counselor's voice resonated directly in their minds. Or more specifically, they need her. They gestured toward Sarah. Me? Sarah raised an eyebrow. What could ancient alien technology possibly want with a human? Not just any human, ZYX Tal corrected. A Deathworlder. One who has proven capable of surviving quantum field exposure. One whose cellular structure resonated with Nexari crystals. Understanding dawned on Sarah's face. The sabotage, the crystal, the quantum field test, it wasn't about keeping humanity out of the Concordat. It was about proving we could survive what's coming. Correct, ZYX Dal's energy form pulsed with grave concern. The Nexari didn't go extinct, Commander. They evolved. Their experiments with quantum manipulation changed them into beings of pure quantum energy. But they lost something in the process, their ability to interact with normal space. And now they want to use humans as some kind of bridge between quantum reality and normal space, Sarah concluded. That's why they've been pushing for this confrontation. They needed to prove humans could handle quantum exposure without breaking down. The station shuddered as quantum energy beams began hurting it toward a specific coordinates. Emergency force fields flickered as reality itself buckled around them. We have to evacuate, Krax clicked urgently. The station's structural integrity can't withstand this level of quantum manipulation. No, Sarah said firmly, her mind racing. This is exactly what they want, to force us into a panic, to demonstrate that the Concordat species can't handle this kind of crisis. To prove that they need Deathworlders. She turned to ZYX Tal. High Counselor, I have a crazy idea. But I'm going to need the Council's trust, and access to your most advanced quantum technology. Commander, Clara interjected, their color shifting to alarmed red, you can't be thinking of trying to communicate with them. The quantum exposure would be exponentially worse than before. Not communicate, Sarah grinned, the expression familiar to anyone who had ever seen a human about to do something spectacularly dangerous. Negotiate. The next hour was a blur of activity. While the Nexari ships continued their quantum siege, Sarah worked with the station's engineers to modify their quantum containment technology. Her experience in the quantum field had given her insights that the Concordat scientists had never considered. The problem isn't that we can't handle quantum energy, she explained as they worked. It's that we're trying to keep it out entirely. But what if instead we created a controlled interface? A way to interact with quantum reality without being overwhelmed by it. The result was something the engineers dubbed a quantum bridge, a hybrid of human biological resilience and concordat quantum technology. Sarah stood in the modified chamber, now wearing what looked like a cross between an EVA suit and a quantum containment field. "This is either brilliant or suicidal," Clara observed, their crystalline form shifting through worried colors. "That's humanity's secret," Sarah replied, checking the final connections. "Sometimes there's no difference between the two." She activated the quantum bridge. Unlike her previous exposure to quantum energy, this time she could feel the power flowing through her in controlled waves. Her Deathworlder biology, evolved to handle extreme conditions, adapted to the quantum interface with surprising ease. "Broadcasting on all quantum frequencies," Krax announced. "If they can hear us, they'll receive your signal." Sarah took a deep breath and began speaking, her voice carried not through normal space, but through quantum resonance. "This is Commander Sarachin of Earth, a Class 13 Deathworld. I understand what you're trying to do, and I'm here to tell you there's a better way." The quantum siege paused. Through the station's sensors, they detected a shift in the Nexary ship's energy patterns. "You think you need to force us to help you," Sarah continued. "You think the only way to bridge the gap between quantum reality and normal space is through conflict and demonstration of power. But that's where you're wrong." A response came, not in words, but in quantum pulses that Sarah's modified suit translated into understandable patterns. "Survival requires adaptation. Adaptation requires catalyst. Deathworlders are catalyst. Survival doesn't have to mean forcing others to change," Sarah argued. "Humanity didn't survive Earth by conquering it, we survived by understanding it, by learning to work with its extremes rather than against them." She gestured to the assembled concordat representatives. "Look at them. You see weakness, because they evolved in safer environments. We see potential allies, each with their own strengths, their own ways of approaching problems. Concordat fears change. Fears difference. Fears US. Of course they do," Sarah laughed. "Change is scary. Difference is scary. But fear doesn't have to lead to rejection. Humans fear plenty of things, we just don't let that fear stop us from moving forward." The quantum pulses intensified, but now they carried a different pattern. Curiosity. Interest. "I'm proposing a real bridge," Sarah continued. "Not just between quantum space and normal space, but between species. Between ways of thinking. The Concordat fears Deathworlders, because we represent chaos and danger. You need Deathworlders, because we represent adaptation and survival. But what if instead of forcing these perspectives to clash, we found a way to make them work together?" There was a long pause. The Nexary ship's quantum signatures shifted, their patterns becoming more complex, more contemplative. "Proposal?" Sarah smiled. "Let's start with something simple. You have quantum technology that needs biological interfaces. We have biological adaptability that needs quantum understanding. The Concordat has centuries of experience managing complex interactions between different species and technologies." She spread her arms, feeling the quantum energy flow through the bridge she'd helped create. "Together, we could create something entirely new. Not through force, not through fear, but through cooperation and innovation. That's the real Deathworld advantage, not just surviving chaos, but learning to turn it into opportunity." The quantum signatures pulsed with what seemed like approval. Slowly, the tears in reality began to seal themselves. The Nexary ship's aggressive formation shifted into something more diplomatic. "Acceptable. Bridge begins." As the quantum siege ended and the station's alarms finally fell silent, Sarah caught sight of her reflection in the chamber's walls. The quantum energy flowing through her modified suit created patterns that mirrored both the Nexary ship's crystalline structure and the organic curves of human design. A bridge between worlds, indeed. 3 months after the quantum siege, the galactic Concordat Central Station looked very different. Quantum stabilization fields hummed alongside traditional power systems, their energies carefully balanced through interfaces designed by human and Nexary engineers working together. Where there had once been strict environmental segregation between species, new hybrid spaces allowed for controlled interaction. Sarah stood in one of these spaces, dubbed convergence chambers by the Earth delegation, watching as a young Nexary quantum consciousness interfaced with a human quantum bridge operator. The sight still amazed her, streams of quantum energy flowing through specially designed neural interfaces, allowing communication between beings that existed in fundamentally different states of reality. Remarkable, Clara chimed beside her, their crystalline form now comfortably close rather than maintaining the old Deathworlder safety distance. 6 standard cycles ago, most species couldn't even comprehend sharing space with a Class 13 Deathworlder. Now we're facilitating direct quantum consciousness transfer. Amazing what can happen when people stop trying to stuff the universe into neat little boxes, Sarah replied, smiling as the human operator successfully completed a complex quantum exchange. Though I have to admit, even I didn't expect things to change this fast. Fear of the unknown cuts both ways. High Counselor ZYX Dow's energy form materialized nearby, their presence carrying the weight of official authority tempered with newfound warmth. The Concordat feared Deathworlders for their chaos and resilience. The Nexary feared emotional beings for their unpredictability and limitation. Both fears prevented us from seeing the potential in combination. Sarah nodded, remembering the tense negotiations that had followed the quantum siege. The Nexary, it turned out, hadn't been trying to conquer or destroy, they'd been desperate. Centuries of existence as pure quantum consciousness had left them increasingly disconnected from the physical universe. They needed biological anchors to maintain their connection to normal space, and they'd identified Deathworlder physiology as uniquely suited to handling quantum interface. Speaking of combinations, Sarah said, turning to ZYX Tau, how's the Council handling the latest proposal? The High Counselor's energy form pulsed with what Sarah had learned to recognize as diplomatic amusement. The Joint Quantum Development Initiative? There's still considerable debate. Some representatives argue that combining human biological engineering with Nexary quantum manipulation and Concordat safety protocols is, how did your ambassador put it? Playing with fire while juggling antimatter. Sounds about right, Sarah grinned. Though personally, I'd have added during a solar storm to really drive home the point. Your species' comfort with catastrophic analogies remains disturbing, Clara chimed, though their colors shifted to show they were joking. Mostly. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden alert from the station's communications system. Commander Chen, your presence is requested in Quantum Lab 7. Priority Alpha. Sarah exchanged glances with her companions. Priority Alpha meant either something had gone very right or very wrong, and with quantum research, the line between the two was often microscopically thin. The lab was a chaos of activity when they arrived. Human scientists worked alongside Concordat researchers and Nexary consciousness interfaces, their various instruments and energy fields creating a symphony of beeps, hums, and quantum resonances. Dr. Helen Martinez, Earth's leading quantum biology researcher, looked up from a complex holographic display. Her dark eyes sparkled with the kind of excitement that Sarah had learned to associate with imminent scientific breakthroughs or spectacular explosions. Commander, you need to see this, Helen said, gesturing to the quantum containment chamber at the center of the lab. Inside, a small object floated in a controlled quantum field. We were running tests on combining human cellular regeneration with Nexary quantum manipulation when we noticed something unexpected. Sarah stepped closer, studying the object through the quantum-shielded viewport. It looked like a simple plant seed, but its surface rippled with quantum patterns that shouldn't have been possible in organic matter. Is that a quantum adaptive organism? Helen confirmed. We think it's what the Nexary were originally trying to achieve before they went full quantum consciousness. A living being that can exist simultaneously in normal space and quantum space, maintaining perfect equilibrium between the two states. Using human cellular adaptability as a template, Clara added, their crystalline form analyzing the seed's patterns. The regenerative capabilities that allow humans to survive on a Class 13 death world also allow for quantum stability at a cellular level. A Nexary consciousness interfaced through a nearby quantum bridge, its thoughts translating into comprehensible patterns. Bridge species creates new path. Evolution continues. More than that, Helen said, pulling up additional data. This could revolutionize everything: space travel, communication, even our basic understanding of life itself. Imagine ships that could navigate quantum space as easily as normal space, colonies that could exist in multiple states of reality simultaneously, medical treatments that could repair quantum-level damage. Or weapons, Sarah pointed out soberly. Let's not pretend this couldn't be misused. Which is precisely why the Council must be informed immediately, ZYX stated, their energy form pulsing with authority. But Sarah held up a hand. Wait. Before we do that, I think we need to consider something else. Something bigger. She turned to address everyone in the lab. We're standing at a crossroads here. This isn't just about new technology or scientific advancement. This is about evolution, not just biological or technological, but social. She gestured to the assembled group: humans, concordat species, and Nexary consciousness all working together. Look at us. A few months ago, most of you wouldn't have believed this was possible. Deathworlders working directly with quantum beings? Different species freely sharing space and knowledge? It would have seemed like pure fantasy. Your point, Commander? ZYX prompted. My point is that maybe this seed isn't just a scientific breakthrough. Maybe it's a symbol of what we can become when we stop letting fear define our limitations. Sarah moved closer to the containment chamber, watching the quantum patterns dance across the seed's surface. The Nexary evolved too far in one direction. The concordat species segregated themselves based on their differences. Even humans, for all our adaptability, tend to think in terms of conquering challenges rather than integrating with them. But this, she continued, this represents a perfect balance. Not dominance of one state over another, but true coexistence. Maybe that's what we should be evolving toward, not just physically or technologically, but as a society. The lab fell silent as her words sank in. Even the quantum field seemed to pulse more softly, as if considering the implications. Finally, Clara spoke. You're suggesting we treat this discovery not as a technological advancement to be controlled, but as a roadmap for future development? Exactly, Sarah nodded. We establish protocols not just for the technology's use, but for how we approach integration and evolution as a whole. The concordat fears chaos, the Nexary fear disconnection, and humans, well, we fear plenty, but we're too stubborn to let it stop us. What if instead of trying to overcome these fears, we used them to guide us toward better solutions? The Nexary consciousness pulsed with approval. Wisdom in balance. Strength in combination. Survival through understanding. It won't be easy, Helen warned. The scientific challenges alone are enormous, let alone the social and political implications. Sarah laughed. Easy? No. But then again, nothing worth doing ever is. That's something every species here understands, whether they evolved on a death world, in quantum space, or in the safest corner of the galaxy. She turned to ZYX Tal. High Counselor, when you bring this to the Council, I suggest we present it not just as a discovery, but as a vision for the future. A future where being a Class 13 Deathworlder isn't seen as a danger to be contained, but as one part of a greater whole. Where quantum beings aren't isolated in their own reality, but integrated into a larger community. Where every species' unique traits contribute to our collective evolution. ZYX Dal's energy form pulsed thoughtfully. A bold proposal, Commander. Some would say impossibly ambitious. Good thing you've got a Deathworlder around to help with the impossible parts, Sarah grinned. After all, that's what we do best, face the impossible and find a way through it, not alone, but together. As if in response, the quantum seed pulsed with new patterns, its light filling the lab with colors that existed in both normal and quantum space. It was beautiful, Sarah thought, watching the patterns dance. Not because it was perfect or controlled or safe, but because it was something entirely new, something that could only exist through the combination of different worlds, different species, different ways of being. A bridge between worlds, evolving into a path toward the future.